Dante Morelli woke before sunrise in the penthouse that had belonged to him for 11 years. The room was too quiet, not the quiet of an empty house. The quiet of a house from which something had been deliberately removed. No guard at the door, no phone on the table, no terminal screen on the desk. On the table there was a hospital wristband cut through at the clasp. Beside it, a passport with no name printed inside. Beside that, a handgun that had not been fired, and a note, written in his own handwriting, in the specific shorthand he used when he needed to remember something before sedation wore off. 4 words, "Find Clara before sunrise." He did not know how he had gotten here. The last thing he remembered with any clarity was a meeting, a room, a glass of something that tasted ceremonial, the way the Morelli family marked occasions, not with warmth but with ritual. After that, nothing, just the ceiling of his own penthouse and the quality of the silence that told him something had been taken. He did not know who had written the note or how he had written it. He recognized the handwriting. He recognized the shorthand. He did not recognize the decision. He knew that whatever had happened, the window was closing. He took the stairs to the private elevator. The panel accepted his hand. Then it did not. The screen read, "No Morelli authorization found." He stood in the stairwell for a moment, looking at his hand. He had pressed that panel every morning for 11 years. He pressed it again. No Morelli authorization found. He walked to the service exit and took the freight elevator to the lobby. The guards at the front desk were new. Not new to Morelli, new to this post. He recognized neither of them. He walked to St. Aurelia. The hospital had belonged to the Morelli family for 2 generations. He stated his name at the reception desk. The receptionist typed. She stopped. Her eyes moved to a photograph on the wall, a photograph that had been there the last time Dante had stood in this lobby for 9 years. The photograph had been replaced. The face in the new frame was not his. He left before the receptionist could call security. He returned to the penthouse through the service corridor. The portrait in the main entrance had been changed. The woman in the new portrait was wearing the look of someone who had been waiting a long time for a room to acknowledge her correctly. Bianca Morelli, his sister-in-law, the woman who had managed the house's personnel files, hospital access, legal records, and internal contracts for the past 8 years. A guard stepped out from behind the entry column, Guard Enzo Vele. Enzo had been with the Morelli family since Dante's father ran it. He was 63 years old. He had a particular way of standing when he was in the presence of someone he recognized. A slight shift of weight, an almost imperceptible straightening of the back. The stance of a man orienting himself around a center of gravity he had been trained to respect. He had been doing it for 30 years. He was doing it now, which meant some part of him already knew who he was looking at, which meant whatever Silas had done had not reached deep enough. Not quite. Dante said, "Enzo, look at me." Enzo looked. For a moment, just a moment, something moved in the old man's face. The panel beside him chimed. The screen read, "I'm Pastor Flagged." Enzo lowered his eyes. No one by that name belongs in this house. His voice was level. It was also the voice of a man reading a line he had been given. Dante walked out before anyone else could see his face. He understood. Dante Morelli had not been beaten. He had been edited out. There was a difference. And only one person in this city could help him prove it. Clara Bennett's archive occupied the basement of a building on a narrow street that no camera network worth governing had ever bothered to include in its sweep. The door had no electronic lock. The windows were papered. Inside, the smell was paper and leather, and the particular dry chemical smell of microfilm cabinets that had been used and not replaced. Clara was at the work table when Dante entered. She did not hear the door. The door made no sound, but she looked up at the precise moment he crossed the threshold. The way people look up when they have learned to monitor the air in a room rather than the sound of it. She looked at him for a long moment. She took in the absence of the guard who usually preceded him. The absence of the coat that signaled a formal appearance. The absence of the particular certainty that men with his kind of power carry like a second posture. She did not look surprised. She looked like someone who had been expecting an event she had not wanted to schedule. "By sunrise," she said, "everyone forgot you existed." Dante said, "You remember me." "I spent 3 years trying not to," she said. "There is a difference." She set down the document she had been examining. She did not stand. She did not come toward him. She looked at him the way a person looks at something they have spent a long time not looking at and have not stopped seeing. "So the man who erased me finally knows what it feels like to be edited out of a room." Dante told her what he had found. The penthouse, the hospital, Enzo, the portrait. Clara listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "Bianca, yes." She had access to all of it: personnel, hospital records, the biometric registry, the council ledger, yes, and she did not need to shoot anyone, no. Clara looked at the work table. "I will help stop Bianca," she said. Then she looked at him directly. "I am not helping you become what you were." He did not argue. He stepped into the archive and looked at the shelves. Every file was physical. Every document was paper. Nothing in this room could be updated from a remote server at 4 in the morning. It was the first room he had been in all night that told the truth. He asked her, eventually, what she remembered about the last time they had seen each other. Clara said, "I remember everything." Dante said, "Tell me," she told him. She spoke carefully, the way people speak when they have rehearsed something, not because they plan to deliver it, but because they spent a long time making sure they had the facts right, so no one could ever tell them they were wrong about what happened to them. She had been the archive director at Morelli St. Aurelia for 6 years. She had been the person who maintained the records that the Morelli family needed to run a hospital, a private legal structure, and a network of interests that required documentation no government registry would ever generate. She had understood exactly what she was keeping and why. She had also understood what it meant that Dante trusted her with it. Then one evening, Dante had called a full council session. He had walked into the room, looked at the assembled capos and board members, and stated that his archive director had been selling confidential records to a competing family. He had produced documentation. He had produced 2 witnesses. He had given her no warning. He had not looked at her once during the session. She had lost her position, her access, her name on every institutional record that had previously carried it, her protection. "And you did all of that," she said, "in 20 minutes. Dante said, "I don't remember all of it." "Convenient. Clara." "You could have told me," she said. Whatever you were protecting me from, you could have come to me. I don't know if I believed that then. No, you believed you knew better. That is not the same as protecting someone. That is just a man with more power deciding he gets to choose. She picked up the document she had set down. I kept the records, she said. After, I kept everything I could take before they changed the locks. Not because I planned to use them against you, because I had spent 6 years building a system I trusted, and I was not going to let what you did make me pretend it had never existed. She looked at him, because one day men like you always need the truth they threw away. Clara set out what she knew about Bianca's methodology. She had been watching the Morelli system from the outside for 3 years. She had kept watching because the archive instinct did not stop functioning, simply because someone had locked you out of the building it lived in. The sequence had been precise. Oath ceremony conducted after midnight, invitees given ceremonial wine. Silas Dorn, the neurologist St. Aurelia, kept on staff for cases that required a particular kind of discretion, had signed what the internal records called a memory stabilization protocol. Silas had been recruited to the hospital by Dante 8 years ago. He had been recruited because he understood that there were moments when institutional memory needed to be managed. Dante had meant protect certain records from outside access. Silas had understood make certain people uncertain about what they remembered. Bianca had found the distinction useful. Portrait replacement logged at 3:44 in the morning. Dante's biometric access revoked at 4:12. Council ledger updated at 4:58. All of it completed before the building's cameras began their morning calibration cycle at 5:30. Sunrise erased him from the house. Sunset would make the lie legal. Bianca had given herself one window to act and one window to formalize. She had used the first one correctly. She did not make them forget you first. Clara said, she changed the world around them until remembering you became the thing that felt wrong. Dante said, why didn't it work on you? Clara looked at him. Because you made sure I was no longer part of your world. The sentence sat in the room. He did not try to answer it. The oath wine affects people who were present in the ceremony, she said. I was not. Silas's protocol requires institutional trust, the belief that what the hospital records say is more reliable than what you remember. I have not trusted Morelli institutional records for 3 years. And the personal part, Dante said. What you did to me was specific, she said. It had my name on it. Silas can blur a room's collective memory of a man named Dante Morelli. He cannot blur a woman's specific memory of a specific injury. She turned back to her work table. Pain, she said, is a very precise archive. The wristband had been cut from Dante's wrist. Clara held it under the lamp and looked at the interior edge of the clasp. The metal was layered, not thick enough to notice, thin enough to dismiss. She used a probe to separate the layers at the hinge point. Inside was a strip of microfilm, folded twice. She loaded it into the reader. The image resolved. A document. His handwriting, old Dante's handwriting, the particular forward slant he used when dictating quickly, when there was not time to be careful. At the top, a line. If the system wakes without me, Clara is the control memory. Below it, a passphrase, a ledger location, a sequence of access instructions, and at the bottom, one more line. Do not let me convince you. The wristband was enough. It was not. And if I am listening to this and thinking it was, I am already doing what Silas wants me to do. Dante read it 3 times. I put this here, he said. Yes, before whatever happened last night. Before whatever Bianca gave you, Clara said, which she probably did under the guise of something routine. A sedation protocol. A pre-ceremony procedure. I did not know what she was planning, but some part of you knew something was coming, Clara said. And you made a plan that required me to be the one who could verify you. She looked at him. You hurt me badly enough to put me outside the lie, she said. And then you built a safety mechanism around that fact. She did not say it with warmth. She said it the way you state a thing that is accurate and also wrong. The microfilm also contained a recording. Clara had the equipment to play it. She set it up without asking whether he wanted to hear it. He did not stop her. The voice was his. The cadence. The particular rhythm of a man who thought in complete sentences before he spoke them. It was also not entirely his. It had the quality of someone speaking to a version of himself he did not fully trust. Careful, deliberate, choosing words the way you choose them when you know they will be used in evidence. It had the quality of a man speaking to a version of himself he did not fully trust. Measured, precise. Choosing words with the care of someone who knew the words might be used against him. It said, the council had evidence that Clara held documentation about the political hostage network. If I defended her, she would become a target for extraction by 2 competing families. If I hid her, Bianca would find the hiding place. Silas had already been approached about a pharmaceutical approach to archive access. There was no version where I kept her safe and kept her present. A pause. So I made her useless to them by making her useless to me. Another pause. Do not let me call this sacrifice noble. I chose for her. That was the betrayal. The protection was real. The method was theft. Both things are true. Dante stood in the archive with his own voice, speaking in the past tense about what he had done to a woman who was standing 3 feet away from him. If she remembers me, it means I hurt her badly enough to keep her outside the lie. Do not ask her to call that mercy. The recording ended. Clara turned off the reader. She did not speak immediately. Dante said, I thought I saved you. You did, she said, and you destroyed me. Both can be true. She picked up the microfilm strip. He knew, she said. The version of you who made this knew exactly what he had done. He just also knew he would not let himself remember it as cleanly the next time. The oath ceremony, Dante said. Silas's preparation, Clara said. He makes people doubt what they remember. Old Dante knew that when he woke up, he might not remember the betrayal the way it actually happened. He might remember it as necessary, as correct, as mercy. She set the microfilm back in its housing, so he left himself a recording that would not let him do that. Dante said nothing. He left it for you, she said, not for me. The first ledger was housed in a room 3 levels below Morelli St. Aurelia, in a section of the building that predated the current structure by 40 years. The room had no electronic connection, no camera, no remote access of any kind. The ledger itself was bound in materials that did not tolerate water, fire, or light poorly. It opened on 3 conditions. The first, blood from the Morelli bloodline, verified by a reagent strip built into the cover. The second, the key that had been fitted into the wristband clasp. The third, a passphrase spoken by the registered witness. Dante had thought the witness was one of the capos. He had cycled through the names of men who had stood beside him for years. Men who had taken oaths, held positions, carried responsibilities. He had thought it would be someone whose loyalty he had documented. He had thought wrong. The passphrase from the microfilm gave him the name. He read it. He read it again. He looked at Clara. She was looking at the ledger with the expression of someone who has just been told they appear in a document they did not know existed. He pressed his thumb to the reagent strip. He inserted the key. Clara said her name. The ledger opened. Dante did not speak for a moment. Old Dante had registered Clara as witness. At some point, before whatever had happened last night, before Bianca had moved, he had stood in this room and entered Clara's name into the access record. He had known, even then, that she was the only one who could not be touched by the system that might come for him. The ledger contained the Sunrise Protocol in its original form. Clara read it without inflection. The original target, detach Clara from Dante. Below it, in a different entry timestamp, a modification. The target had been changed. Detach Dante from Morelli. Bianca did not create the protocol, Clara said. She found it and changed 2 words. Dante looked at the last page of the ledger. 2 options had been set in the original document in old Dante's handwriting. Restore name, void throne. Restore name would reinstate his biometrics, his council standing, his Viper Boss designation, and all institutional recognition. It would also reinstate every system connection that had been severed, including the connection between his records and Clara's. Clara's name would return to the Morelli archive system. She would become leverage again. Void Throne would publish the truth. Every modification Bianca had made, every timestamp, Silas's protocol, the oath wine, the changed portrait, the revoked biometric. It would confirm Dante as the real Viper Boss of record, and then it would confirm his resignation. The throne would dissolve. Morelli would be required to elect a new leadership structure under council oversight. Dante would have his name back. He would not have his seat. Old Dante had written beneath the options, in smaller script, "This is not a trap, it is a mirror. Look at which one you reach for first." Dante looked at Clara. She was reading the same page. She did not look at him. Bianca had called the council session for sunset. She had given the council members 24 hours notice. Enough time to feel the weight of the summons, not enough time to investigate it independently. She had requested formal dress. She had arranged flowers on the table, which was the kind of detail that communicated certainty. People who are unsure of the outcome do not order flowers. She had arranged it correctly. Council members in their seats, Morelli staff standing at the walls, Silas at the side table with a medical file. She stood at the center of the room with the confidence of a person who had been preparing for this moment for longer than anyone in the room had understood. She did not look like someone who had stolen something. She did not look like she was performing authority. She looked like someone who had been performing the absence of authority for so long that finally being allowed to stop was its own form of exhaustion. She had known for 8 years exactly how much of what ran was because of her. She looked like someone who had been waiting for the house to catch up. "You thought I managed your house," Bianca said when she saw him enter. "I was the reason your house knew where to kneel." She said it without heat. as a statement of record. She turned to the counsel. The man presenting himself as Dante Morelli has been assessed by the hospital's chief neurologist. Dr. Dorn will present his findings. Silas stood. He described a condition he called false identity persistence. He described the clinical presentation. He described the patient's resistance to institutional verification as a symptom. He was midway through the second page of his presentation when the door opened. Dante and Clara entered. Bianca looked at Clara first. She looked at Clara the way a person looks at a variable they had accounted for and then dismissed. "I have an offer," Bianca said, to Clara only. "Confirm that this man's claim to the Morelli name is a delusion, and I will restore your record, your accreditation, your position, your institutional standing, everything he took from you." She let that sit. "You can have your name back," she said. "You only have to say one true thing, that the system no longer recognizes him." Clara looked at Bianca. She looked at the counsel. She set the first ledger on the table. "I will not buy my name back with another lie." She opened the ledger. "Paper has to be burned by hand," she said. "Screens can be rewritten from anywhere. Paper requires someone in the room to decide to destroy it." Bianca said the ledger could have been fabricated. Clara presented the original Sunrise Protocol with its modification timestamp. She presented the oath wine, still sealed, taken from the preparation room before the ceremony, the original batch, untouched. She presented Silas's pharmaceutical supply log, pulled from a record he had not known she had copied. She presented the biometric revocation log, time-stamped 4 hours before sunrise. She presented the microfilm from the wristband she called Enzo Vale. The old guard walked to the center of the room. His hands were not entirely steady. Clara said, "Did you ever forget completely?" Enzo looked at Dante. Something in his face settled into a stillness that was not the stillness of forgetting. "No," he said. "I was told remembering him meant something was wrong with me." The room changed. Not dramatically, not with noise or movement. It changed the way a room changes when people who have been told their memory is broken realize simultaneously that the problem was never the memory. Silas began to speak again. Bianca reached for the ledger. Dante put his hand on it first. Bianca looked at him. She had one option left, and she knew it. "Then take it back," she said. "Prove you are still a boss." Dante looked at the ledger. He looked at Clara. He did not decide in the dark the way he had decided 3 years ago. He said, "If I restore the name, what happens to you?" Clara said, "What always happens to women tied to powerful men. I become leverage." He looked at the counsel. He looked at the ledger. He thought about what old Dante had written. "This is not a trap, it is a mirror. Look at which one you reach for first." He had reached for restore name first. He had reached for it before he had finished reading. That was the information. He had been in this position before, knowing what he wanted, knowing it would cost someone else, and he had chosen the thing that cost her. He was not going to do it again. He placed his hand on the first ledger. "Void thrown," he said. The ledger registered the selection. For a moment, an elder at the far end of the table looked ready to object. Then he saw his own signature in the ledger margin, confirming he had witnessed the original Sunrise Protocol. He closed his mouth. The entries generated automatically. Dante Morelli confirmed as Viper Boss of record. Modification of Sunrise Protocol by Bianca Morelli confirmed as unauthorized. Memory Stabilization Protocol conducted by Dr. Silas Dorn confirmed as coercive and conducted without informed consent. Dante Morelli's resignation from the position of Viper Boss registered as voluntary and immediate. The council would conduct a supervised election within 60 days. Bianca was taken from the room. She went without speaking, not because she had nothing to say, because there was nothing left to say that the record did not already contain. She had wanted the house to acknowledge what she had done. It had, in every way except the one she had planned. She had understood for several minutes that the thing she had wanted most had not been the throne. It had been acknowledgement that she had been running the house all along. She had gotten that. The record now said it. It also said what she had done with it. Silas was detained for council review. The room cleared slowly. The way rooms clear when something has happened that people need to walk away from before they can process it. Enzo Vale stood near the door until the room was almost empty. He looked at Dante. He did not say anything. He straightened his back in the way he had always straightened it, in the presence of someone he recognized, and then he walked out. Dante stood beside the first ledger in a room that now contained the truth about him, correctly recorded, and no authority attached to his name. He said, "If the only way to be remembered is to make her vulnerable again, then let the throne forget me." Clara had already started toward the exit. She stopped. She did not turn around. She said, "That was the first decision you made that did not steal mine." She walked out. He let her go. Weeks later, the bell above the archive door rang. Clara was at the work table. She looked up. Dante came in without the suit, without the guard, without the coat that functioned as a second authority. He looked like a man who had spent several weeks making decisions in the absence of any institutional structure that would validate them for him. He looked, Clara thought, like someone who had recently been forced to find out what he was when none of the systems that had been defining him were running. He came in without the particular posture of a man who expected rooms to rearrange themselves around him. He set a folder on the counter. He stepped back. She did not open it immediately. She looked at him. "You came to give me proof you fixed what you broke?" she said. "No," he said. "I came to give you proof I know I broke it." She opened the folder. Every document that had been used to remove her from her position. The dismissal order. The council resolution. The accreditation revocation. The institutional access termination. The protection withdrawal. Every one of them stamped with a single word. Void. She looked at the stack for a long time. "I have a name again," he said. "I am trying to learn how not to use it as a weapon." She looked at him. "And what are you now, Dante Morelli?" he said. "A man who has to ask before he stays." She did not open the door wider. She did not close it. By sunrise, the city had forgotten Dante Morelli existed. His penthouse forgot his hand. His hospital forgot his blood. His guards forgot the shape of his command. But Clara Bennett remembered him because betrayal leaves a record no protocol can erase. And when Dante finally won his name back, he understood the truth too late and just in time. The name was never worth more than the woman he had taught the world to forget. Was Dante's final choice enough to begin repairing what he stole from Clara? Or is one selfless decision too small to repay 3 years of stolen agency? Share your answer below. and subscribe to Mafia Hearts and Secrets for more dangerous romances hidden inside the underworld's most powerful families.